As the global economy braces for uncertainty, the latest escalation in U.S. China trade tensions has sent a shockwave through financial markets. Following President Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping tariffs on imports, the Chinese government responded with its own set of retaliatory measures, leading to a significant downturn in stock markets worldwide. The unfolding situation has raised alarm among investors and policymakers alike, prompting urgent discussions about its economic implications. On April 5, 2025, U.S. stock markets experienced a dramatic decline for the second consecutive day, with major indexes dropping over 5%. This sell-off followed Trump's declaration of a 10% tariff on imports from numerous countries, which was coupled with a staggering 34% tariff on goods from China. The cumulative impact of these tariffs has led to fears of inflation, recession, and a slowdown in global economic growth. The market has spoken, stated Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gui Jiaquan, reflecting the widespread anxiety regarding the ramifications of the trade war. He labeled the U.S. actions as unprovoked and unjustified, urging for equal-footed consultation to resolve the mounting tensions. In a bold show of defiance, Trump took to social media to reaffirm his stance, insisting that the tariffs were a necessary step to rectify what he termed unsustainable trade practices. He claimed that China had suffered more from the tariffs than the U.S. and touted an economic revolution driven by significant investments returning to American soil. "Hang tough, it won't be easy, but the end result will be historic," he proclaimed, signaling a refusal to back down amidst mounting market pressures. The escalating trade conflict is also causing ripples across international borders. Countries reliant on exports to the U.S., like those in Southeast Asia, find themselves grappling with unexpectedly high tariffs, with some nations facing levies as steep as 49%. Jayant Menon, a senior fellow at the ISAS Yusof Ishak Institute, highlighted the precarious situation of these nations, emphasizing the necessity for diversification in their trade partnerships to mitigate the impact of U.S. policies. As he expressed, these are not reciprocal tariffs, designed to balance trade on a bilateral basis, underscoring the challenges faced by these economies. The situation is further complicated by fears of inflation and rising consumer prices in the U.S. as various industry sectors brace for the impact of the tariffs. For instance, the agriculture sector is already feeling the pressure, with potential increases in the cost of imported goods like eggs, which could lead to higher prices for consumers. Experts warn that this could trigger a chain reaction of price hikes across various sectors, complicating the economic landscape. In the automotive industry, companies like Jaguar Land Rover are pausing shipments to the U.S. as they assess the implications of the new tariffs. The firm's decision reflects broader concerns regarding the viability of exporting vehicles to the U.S. under increasing tariffs, which could have long-lasting effects on employment and production in the U.K. As the dust settles on this latest round of tariffs, global leaders and economists are calling for a re-evaluation of the trade policies that have sparked this turmoil. The European Central Bank's Isabel Schnabel cautioned that the uncertainty introduced by the U.S. tariffs could worsen economic conditions in the Eurozone, highlighting the interconnected nature of the global economy. Some people had the view that Liberation Day could be the day of peak uncertainty, but I'm not entirely sure that is the case, she warned. Looking ahead, the world watches closely as the U.S. and China navigate this precarious moment in their economic relationship. The potential for further retaliatory measures looms large, with both sides needing to weigh the costs of escalation against the possibility of dialogue. As the landscape evolves, the ramifications of these tariffs will likely reverberate through global markets, affecting industries and consumers alike. The outcome of this trade conflict may very well shape the future of international trade dynamics for years to come. In a complex interplay of international relations and domestic policy, the recent developments surrounding China's ambitions to become a global arbitration hub and the unfolding impacts of President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs highlight the intricate dynamics at play. While China seeks to position cities like Beijing and Shanghai as competitive alternatives to established arbitration centers in London and Singapore, the path forward remains clouded by credibility issues, local practices, and geopolitical tensions. Experts have pointed out that despite the presence of around 282 registered arbitration institutions in China, the nation still has significant ground to cover before it can effectively compete on the international stage. Ma Zhihua, a partner at Beijing's Dehui law firm, emphasizes that while discussions about enhancing China's arbitration capabilities have taken place at various levels of government, tangible progress is still lacking. Various initiatives are underway across different Chinese cities, but they are still quite far from becoming true international arbitration centers, Ma stated, underscoring the need for the legal profession in China to align more closely with international practices and build trust. China's push for arbitration reform is in part a response to the increased disputes arising from the global expansion of Chinese businesses. However, as these ambitions unfold, they are overshadowed by the more immediate concerns of U.S. China trade relations, particularly in light of Trump's recent tariff announcements. On April 5, 2025, Trump implemented universal tariffs of 10% on nearly all imports, a move that has sent shockwaves through financial markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average experienced one of its worst days since June 2020, plummeting over 2,200 points, while the S&P 500 fell by 6%. Trump remains steadfast in his belief that these tariffs will ultimately bolster American manufacturing and lead to greater economic prosperity. "Hang tough, it won't be easy, but the end result will be historic," he declared in a social media post, framing the tariffs as part of a broader economic revolution. China has retaliated with its own measures, introducing a 34% tariff on American goods, which raises the stakes in this ongoing trade war. As Trump doubles down on his tariff strategy, questions are emerging regarding the long-term implications for U.S. consumers and businesses. Critics warn that the tariffs will lead to increased prices for American consumers and could exacerbate inflationary pressures. The geopolitical landscape further complicates matters, particularly concerning TikTok, the popular social media app owned by China's ByteDance. Trump recently extended the deadline for ByteDance to divest its U.S. operations due to complications arising from the newly imposed tariffs. Initially, the company was given until April 5 to find a non-Chinese buyer, but has now received a 75-day reprieve. This decision reflects the chaotic intersection of trade policy and technology. As the U.S. government navigates national security concerns while attempting to balance economic interests, legal challenges also loom over Trump's tariff initiatives. A conservative legal group has filed a lawsuit claiming that the president's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs is unlawful and infringes upon Congress's authority. This legal battle could set significant precedents regarding the scope of executive power in trade matters. As these narratives unfold, they reflect a broader theme of uncertainty regarding China's role in the global economy and the effectiveness of U.S. trade policies. The interplay between domestic ambitions, international relations, and the legal landscape will undoubtedly shape future developments, not only for China but also for the global economic system as a whole. The coming months are likely to be pivotal in determining how these tensions will resolve and what strategies both nations will employ to navigate the increasingly complex web of global trade and diplomacy. As the global economic landscape continues to shift dramatically, the recent trade tensions between China and the United States have catalyzed a series of strategic maneuvers aimed at preserving economic stability and fostering new partnerships. With the escalation of tariffs under the current U.S. administration, China finds itself at a crossroads, requiring innovative strategies to navigate an increasingly hostile trade environment. The U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods have surged from 20% to an alarming 54%, prompting a swift and decisive response from Beijing. China's finance ministry announced retaliatory measures, increasing tariffs on U.S. imports by 34%. Further intensifying market volatility. Financial analysts are expressing concern over the potential for a recession in the U.S. and its ripple effects on global markets as businesses brace for the impending economic storm. In this tense atmosphere, Chinese President Xi Jinping has initiated a diplomatic charm offensive seeking to bolster trade relations with other countries. Notably, she reached out to India's President Draupadi Murmu, emphasizing the mutual benefits of collaboration in a letter that framed their relationship as a dragon-elephant tango. This outreach reflects China's broader strategy to redirect its exports away from the U.S. toward alternative markets, a move that could reshape global trade dynamics. While China has historically been a dominant player in global trade, the recent tariff increases have raised fears of a systemic realignment. Analysts warn of a possible campaign of dumping goods or increasing subsidies to maintain competitiveness in foreign markets. BYD, a Chinese manufacturer that has recently surpassed Tesla in electric vehicle sales, is already eyeing expansion into Europe despite facing its own set of tariffs. Former UK Treasury Minister Jim O'Neill suggests that the escalating trade conflict might lead to a restructuring of global trade alliances. He argues for a concerted effort among G7 nations to lower trade barriers collectively, particularly in light of the growing economic clout of China, which exports more goods to the EU than to the US. This shift could signify a new era of trade relations, with Europe and China potentially putting aside their own disputes to champion multilateralism. Meanwhile, the UK finds itself in a precarious position, having secured relatively low tariffs under the Biden administration. Yet the need to engage with China remains pressing as the UK risks being inundated with competitively priced Chinese goods threatening local industries. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has emphasized the necessity of working with China, particularly in non-contentious sectors. The ramifications of the ongoing tariff war extend beyond immediate economic concerns. They pose existential challenges for regional economies, especially in Southeast Asia. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN), which has become a conduit for Chinese exports to the U.S., faces potential upheaval as tariffs on imports from member states like Vietnam and Cambodia increase. This shift could further complicate the economic landscape as local industries brace for impact. Against this backdrop, experts warn that the current trade war could trigger a global downturn, with repercussions far exceeding the immediate scope of tariffs. With U.S. imports of Chinese goods comprising only 2% of China's overall economy, the focus for Beijing may soon turn inward, prompting increased domestic stimulus measures aimed at sustaining growth. As Chinese policymakers prepare to ramp up fiscal stimulus, the long-term impacts of these evolving trade dynamics remain uncertain. The delicate balance between centralized state control and market forces, a theme echoed by scholars at the Hoover Institution's recent conference on China's economic history, will be crucial in determining whether China can navigate these turbulent waters successfully. Looking ahead, the question remains: can China adapt its historical governance models to thrive amidst sustained economic distress? As global trade relationships evolve in response to aggressive tariff policies, all eyes will be on Beijing to see how it maneuvers through this unprecedented challenge. The future of international trade could very well hinge on the outcomes of these negotiations and the strategies employed by both China and its global partners. In a week marked by escalating tensions in the Taiwan Strait, the geopolitical chess game between China and Taiwan is intensifying. Recent developments have drawn international attention as both sides gear up militarily and politically, navigating complex regional dynamics that could have far-reaching implications. On April 1 and 2, the People's Liberation Army (PLA) conducted extensive military exercises simulating a blockade around Taiwan. The drills involved multiple branches of the PLA, showcasing its preparedness for a potential conflict. According to Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, these exercises included 135 aircraft sorties and numerous naval vessels, emphasizing the PLA's ability to encircle Taiwan from all directions. Such maneuvers are viewed as a direct response to Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te's administration, which has increasingly asserted its independence and criticized Beijing's influence. In parallel, Taiwan's political landscape is shifting as the Central Election Commission advanced 8 recall petitions targeting legislators from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party (DPP). Historically, attempts to recall DPP officials have failed to gain traction, with most successful efforts aimed at the opposition Kuomintang KMT. The current situation reflects a growing political weaponization of recalls, a trend that has emerged since reforms in 2016 made the process more accessible. The DPP's challenges are further compounded by economic concerns as recent KMT-led budget cuts threaten military readiness and government functionality. Adding to the complexity, China has intensified its information warfare strategy, framing Taiwanese leaders, particularly President Lai, as authoritarian oppressors. This narrative is part of a broader campaign to undermine the DPP's credibility and sow discord within Taiwanese society. The Chinese Taiwan Affairs Office has actively targeted individuals and groups supporting Taiwan's independence, labeling them as diehards in a bid to intimidate opposition and consolidate Beijing's narrative. Taiwan is also responding to perceived threats through civil defense initiatives. On March 27, the Whole of Society Defense Resilience Committee launched live civil defense drills intended to prepare the public for potential emergencies, including wartime scenarios. This approach underscores the DPP's commitment to strengthening national resilience against external threats and internal espionage, further highlighted by recent prosecutions of individuals accused of collaborating with Chinese intelligence. In the international arena, the United States remains a pivotal ally for Taiwan. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's recent visit to Manila underscores a deepening military relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines, with new missile systems being deployed to enhance regional deterrence against Chinese aggression. The U.S. is also reportedly finalizing a potential sale of F-16 fighter jets to the Philippines, a move that, while framed as a modernization effort, raises concerns in Beijing regarding the shifting balance of power in the South China Sea. Japan is also taking proactive measures by announcing its first evacuation contingency plan for the Sakishima Islands situated close to Taiwan. This decision, while framed as a precautionary measure, has drawn criticism from China, which views any military alignment involving Taiwan as an infringement on its territorial integrity. Japan's plan reflects a broader commitment to regional security, aligning with its national security strategy to ensure prompt evacuation in the face of escalating tensions. As the situation evolves, analysts are closely watching for signs of increased military engagement or further diplomatic maneuvers. The upcoming Hongkwang military exercises in Taiwan, set to last 2 weeks, will likely simulate scenarios involving PLA gray zone activities, actions that are aggressive yet fall short of outright warfare. These exercises are critical for assessing Taiwan's readiness against potential Chinese incursions and are indicative of broader concerns regarding a possible full-scale invasion by 2027, a timeline that some experts have highlighted as a potential flashpoint. In conclusion, the intertwining political, military, and diplomatic developments surrounding China and Taiwan reflect a complex and precarious situation, with military exercises and political maneuvers intensifying on both sides. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining the trajectory of cross-strait relations and the broader Indo-Pacific security landscape. Observers will be keenly attuned to how these dynamics unfold, particularly as Taiwan's civil defense initiatives and international partnerships evolve in response to an increasingly assertive China. In the ever-evolving landscape of U.S.-China relations, the recent military maneuvers by Beijing around Taiwan have raised significant concerns about the stability of the region and the potential for diplomatic engagement. On April 1, 2025, China conducted a large-scale military exercise encircling Taiwan, marking the fifth such event since former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's controversial visit to the island in August 2022. This latest show of force comes amid heightened tensions following the inauguration of Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te, who will soon deliver his first anniversary speech. Observers speculate that any remarks perceived as provocative could trigger further military actions from China, including potential incursions into Taiwan's territorial waters or airspace. As the U.S. Navy remains cautious, with aircraft carriers like the USS Carl Vinson steering clear of the Taiwan Strait during these exercises, the situation underscores a pattern of U.S.-China rivalry characterized by shadowboxing, a term used to describe their posturing without direct confrontation. Taiwanese citizens seem largely unfazed by this military display, interpreting it as a strategic maneuver in a broader geopolitical game. The local stock market continues to thrive, reflecting a resilient mindset amidst external pressures. The rhetoric from Lai, which many see as a response to U.S. backing, has been interpreted as an attempt to elevate the urgency for a summit between U.S. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. This diplomatic push is complicated by the presence of hawkish elements within the U.S. government, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who advocate for a tougher stance against Beijing. Analysts suggest that while Trump's approach to diplomacy favors compromise through conflict, the actions of his administration could inadvertently escalate tensions in the Taiwan Strait. The implications of China's military exercises extend beyond mere displays of power. They are calculated efforts to assert control over Taiwan and the surrounding waters. Each drill enhances the capabilities of the Chinese military while simultaneously countering U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, thus solidifying Beijing's position in any future conflict. The economic ramifications are also alarming. As recent exercises disrupted the docking of natural gas transport ships to Taiwan, raising concerns about potential energy shortages on the island, which relies heavily on imports to sustain its economy. Moreover, the dynamics of U.S.-China relations are further complicated by the broader geopolitical landscape, where actions taken by one party can have cascading effects. For instance, the ongoing military exercises are not just a means of intimidation but also serve to test the waters for U.S. responses and gauge Taiwan's alignment with American interests. The potential for miscalculation looms large as Taiwan navigates its relationship with both superpowers, often underestimating the risks associated with its provocations. China's recent military posturing comes at a time when she is simultaneously engaging with international business leaders, indicating that while the Taiwan issue remains significant, it may not be the top priority for Beijing amid a broader economic revitalization effort. However, these military drills send a clear message: China is willing to use its military might to protect what it perceives as its sovereign rights. As the U.S. and China continue their strategic chess match over Taiwan, the stakes remain high. The absence of a clear and direct dialogue could lead to unintended escalations, with both sides remaining wary of the other's intentions. For Trump, the path forward involves a delicate balancing act, pressuring Beijing while avoiding a direct confrontation that could spiral out of control. Looking to the future, the potential for a U.S.-China summit hinges on both leaders' willingness to engage in negotiations that prioritize de-escalation over confrontation. However, with rising tensions and the complexities of domestic and international politics, the road to meaningful dialogue may still be a long one. As the geopolitical chess game unfolds, all eyes will be on how both nations navigate this intricate landscape, ultimately determining the fate of Taiwan and the broader Asia-Pacific region.